everybody, Arnaldo Wolferman here of Gear It First, doing another incredible live stream. I've actually been looking forward to this one for a while now. I am here with the super cool, awesome Pokemon Master, Gary.
How's it going?
Introduce yourself to everybody real quick.
Name's Gary Boss. I work for Audio-Technica. We are a maker of turntables, headphones, and microphones and other transducer-related goodies. I've been with the company 26 years. Holy crap. And I'm the marketing director there. So I got a chance to work on most of the projects that came out of the company in the past, say, 20 years. I'm not an engineer, but I have a pretty strong technical background. So that's me. Ta-da.
And for those of you guys that are relatively new to the channel, Audio-Technica is pretty much all I personally use. I'm a huge fan of the products. I actually have one here. I've got the 2020, which I just moved into a new studio, so I don't have everything all set up. And I would have the M50 headphones, but Johnny, my son, has them because he uses them for his studio work because he loves them. But today, guys, we're going to talk about choosing the right headphone. There are multiple types, and Audio-Technica offers pretty much everything that we're going to talk about today. And then same thing with microphones. And then as a last-minute surprise, we are going to talk about the FCC because they have decided to, once again, stick it to us DJs. So...
And manufacturers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you guys too. Well, you know, because a lot of DJs think, oh, man, the manufacturers just make money out of this, but they don't realize it's a headache for the manufacturers. You got to change tooling, and then you got to get a whole bunch of phone calls from customers saying, now what?
Blaming us.
Yep.
It's not our fault.
No, and they don't realize multiple manufacturers, I know you guys included, you know, went and lobbied to the FCC back when this whole 700 thing went through, and It's like they don't care. We're a very small fraction of the industry compared to T-Mobile. So, for those of you guys that are not in the United States, God, y'all are lucky because you're going to get some incredible deals on microphones pretty soon, it seems. So, unless you're in Canada, I think you guys are screwed too. If you're close enough
Yep, they are.
Yeah, is it all of Canada or what's going on with that?
I think they're following the FCC, so they're keeping it pretty close to what we're doing down here.
So if you guys are in the UK, congratulations. You might want to contact me. I've got a yard sale coming up soon. But all right, so let's talk about headphones because, I mean, obviously there's three different kinds really that I've seen DJs use. We have IEMs, and I know that you guys also sell in-ear monitors.
Yep,
and
we do.
In the last stream, we did talk about that. So, you know, in a nutshell, guys, IEMs, in my opinion, they save your ears. My ears haven't rung anymore since you switched to IEMs. The difficult part is when you first switch to them, you don't hear anything around you. So if somebody comes up to you, you're never going to notice them unless you're actually looking at them. But
Yeah.
I know a lot of you guys, and I really wanted to talk on the latter too, which is more of the on-ear headphones and over-the-ear headphones. When I first started DJing, I literally went with on-ear, and this is supposedly over-the-ear, but it's almost like on my ear directly. They are a little bit smaller. They're more compact. If you guys remember like the old school Sonys that would fold nice and tight, after a while, my ears started hurting. I got the physical fatigue, and I replaced cups like crazy because they got sweaty. I know that with Audio-Technica, you guys have the much larger over-the-ear headphones, right? The M50X, that's an over-ear headphone model, correct?
Yeah, and I'm actually wearing the M50 original, believe it or not. So these are the OGs. This was a limited edition red we did. I just kind of found it and plugged them in. But yeah, if you notice, these are a full-size ear pad, and that goes around your ear. You know, a lot of people are concerned about comfort and long wearing and getting that fatigue. And there's two things that cause that fatigue. One of them is, you know, just the physical presence of having headphones on becomes tiring. These happen to be very comfortable headphones, and I've heard that in the field a lot. But the other thing is the way a headphone is voiced, meaning the actual sound characteristic of the headphone. Some headphones can become very fatiguing orally. Actually, what's coming out of the headphone, it has to do typically with the high frequency balance, and that can become very, very disturbing and grating over time. These headphones are made to be used in the studio. They're made to be used for a long period of time, and they're made to be very flat and to translate the low frequencies very well. So they have a really good low end to them as well. So they tend not to be physically or orally fatiguing, but that's our ATH-M50. I guess I'm allowed to pimp it a little bit
Of
since,
course.
you know, you had me on. So
Absolutely.
if you look, we have like 3,000 or 4,000 5-star reviews on this. It's one of those products that comes along once in a great while for a manufacturer that just kind of hits on all cylinders, and that's what this has done for us.
So one of the questions that was submitted, actually before I even did the live stream, was that with a lot of the studio cans, that they usually require a more powerful, headphone amp, and a lot of the actual, professional boards already have a good headphone amp. Most DJ boards don't. How are are the M50Xs, are they as power hungry as some of the other large over-the-ear headphones, or?
Okay, well we'll get into that a little bit.
Yeah.
So one of the specifications on headphones is impedance. So the impedance, it's a technical term, but it's like everyone talks about electricity and flowing in a water type of a hose situation, and it's essentially it's how much pressure you need to drive the headphones. So the higher the impedance, the more power you need to drive. So typically, if you're looking at audiophile headphones, these are ones that maybe companies will make, like us included, that'll be $500 to $1,000 to $1,500. They're almost always used with some type of external headphone amplifier, which is also very expensive. It's a very high current design with a lot of output. And so those headphones will typically be in the 500 to 600 ohm range. Mm-hmm. Then when you get down into more consumer audio, you can drive, say, into the 100 to 150 to 200 ohm range. And then when you're talking about the headphone amplifier in, say, a portable electronic device like my iPhone here, you want something like 60 ohms or below. These were specially designed to handle tons of power, however, have a very low impedance. So I can drive these to a pretty decent level with my iPhone. So that means a headphone amplifier on a laptop or a DJ mixer will be more than sufficient to drive these to probably excessive volume, to put it frankly. But yeah, so you want, if you're going to be using devices where you're not using an external headphone amplifier, you want to look for something, below 100, say 60 or below, as far as the impedance goes on your headphones.
So let's say a DJ uses, like the M50Xs, and they love how they sound on their studio board, but in their DJ board, again, not a very good amp on those. Do you guys have like a line driver or headphone amp?
On our consumer side, we do have headphone amps, but I really haven't had anyone complain that much. I mean, typically when you get into the headphone amp on most equipment, that's kind of where you cheap out, because you're trying to put the money into the faders or whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah.
But I have not had an issue with either. Like, I have electronic drums in my studio. I've used them with that. I have keyboards and stuff. So any of these types of devices will drive these more than adequately in volume. But that's a good question. So typically the high-end stuff where you're using external amps have higher impedances. And if you're looking to drive things off of consumer goods or below, like portable devices, you want to be around 60 or below.
Oh, absolutely. So pretty much, all the headphones that I think most DJs have ever used have been closed back. And DJs, if you know what that means actually, if you can show yours, because yours are closed back.
Yeah.
It's basically closed completely, right? And that allows you that when you put it on, you don't hear anything around you. It helps isolate the sound. But if you ever notice, like, even with like some of the smaller, I know that you guys have one of the IEMs that have like little ports in them, and that's because bass needs air to move. So then we also have, or you guys also have, the open back. Let's talk about that. What exactly is open back, and when would somebody actually use that?
Okay, so we actually, in our pro side, have one pair of open back headphones, and we have 20, 30, 40, 50, 7. We have 5 pair of closed back headphones. Mm-hmm. The reason for that discrepancy is typically open back headphones are not used in professional audio, and I'll give you the exception. So if we're talking about being in the studio and we're going to be on an open microphone, we want to use closed back headphones, because Open back are exactly what the name sounds like. They actually let air in from the outside, and the sound emanates out the back of the headphone as much as it does on the inside to your ears. Whereas a closed back, think about it as muffs with the drivers on the inside. You can't hear it outside. So in the studio, typically if I'm tracking drums or I'm singing, I don't want the sound of my headphones leaking into the microphones. That's a bad thing. Or if I'm doing a podcast or streaming or a radio broadcast, I don't want my headphones streaming. You also have the potential you can feedback in some regards too. So sometimes you can actually get the headphone and microphone to feedback if you have a foldback system. On the DJ side of things, you're typically in a loud environment. So remember when I said the sound can leak out? It can just as easily leak in. So if I have open back headphones and I'm in a loud environment, I'm going to hear the environment just as loud as I would as if I didn't have headphones on. And that's typically not the ideal situation for a DJ application. So for the most part, open back headphones are not used in pro audio or DJ situations. Now, the exception comes the ATH R70. That's we call it reference. That's a very flat headphone. So one of the benefits to open back headphones is they tend to be very flat. That's why a lot of audiophiles use them, and they tend to be very expensive. They also tend to have a very linear low end. If you think about a ported subwoofer as opposed to a sealed subwoofers many times can become very boomy. It accentuates the low end, where sometimes ported can be a little more linear or flat. The same thing happens with headphones. So if I am going to maybe mix a record, so I'm in the studio and I want to master or mix, and I want to listen for reverb tails, and I want to listen to my sound stage. Open back headphones have really good sound stage. I would probably put a pair of open backs on to reference the mix. So that's pretty much what we make those open back for, at least for Audio-Technica. Pretty much every other application excels with a closed back headphone. So,
and because air can move freely, pretty much the bass response on these things would be incredible, correct?
Well, actually, you would think it's different. So
really?
Typically with a closed back design, you can get a little more bass because it's like a sealed box. Because the diaphragm can move a little more freely with the engineering in that, on the open back, you tend to get a very linear response. It doesn't have a resonance like you would in a cabinet, because you're not in a cabinet. It's like putting a cone in free air. So when you put a cone in a box, now you're getting the resonance of the box, and that can sometimes accentuate certain low frequencies. Whereas an open back, that diaphragm moves freely in the air, and you're not dependent upon the actual resonance of the cabinet. You don't have to port it. You don't have to do all kinds of things. Like these headphones, if you open them up, there's ports around the diaphragm. There's all kinds of engineering know-how in there to get that low frequency to be nice and linear, but still have a closed back headphone. So,
interesting to know. So, I mean, that being said, it pretty much, I don't want to say narrows, but it's pretty much obvious as far as a DJ, or those, that if you guys do studio, that's a whole different thing, which way to go. But if you are doing live events, it's whether you go IEM or if you do, and I definitely recommend over the ear. Like I said, I have personally used,
no question.
Yeah, I've used on ear, and the worst part about on ear is with ear sweat after a while, that the inside parts, the cups will wind up tearing up on you, and then you have tons of little pieces everywhere. Every time
we actually redesigned our ear pads, by the way, Arnaldo.
Really?
So ours did that, like I would say 8 years ago. We had big problems with that, and we have redesigned on the M50. That's one of the things that happened when we went to the X, the headband material and the ear pads. We have updated cushions and material, and those are sold. I always say ear pads, and I think you alluded to this. That's like brakes on a car. That's a wear component of your electronics, right? So you will have to replace those from time to time, but thank goodness they're not that expensive, $20 or so. In fact, on the M series headphones, we have a detachable cable. Hey, I know you roll over it with your chair, whatever happens, you can just replace that cable without having to send your whole headphone in. So those were the two of the improvements we did on that X version. But you're totally correct on that ear pad thing.
Absolutely. And actually, one of the things I did with the 50Xs, M50Xs, I actually put a shorter cable on it. And DJs, for those of you that are not familiar, we'll talk about microphones in a minute, but this is the System 10 microphone mount. And basically, you have your body pack and you have your actual receiver. And what I do is I put this in my pocket. I feed the cable down into this guy here. This goes into my mixer, and now I have wireless headphones. And
Yep.
it sounds incredible.
You're nutty.
This was a lot.
You got to remember, like Arnaud, like he thinks outside the box. We do not have a lot of users doing this stuff. I appreciate that he does all this wacky stuff and conveys it to everyone, but he is a bit of a nutty dude. Like, we do not have a ton of people doing stuff like that.
It blew my mind because I needed a wireless monitoring system. We did a concert with Cupid. He's a good friend of ours, and he's like, in the future, I'd love to have wireless monitors. I'm like, yeah, I'd love to have, freaking $1,000 to $5,000 for a good wireless monitor system. And then I'm like, wait, why am I doing that? Like, couldn't I just use this? And it's worked great since. I've done it for a couple other artists. And I'm like, listen, bring your own monitors. If you guys have your own you like, they're like, yeah, we prefer using our own. We just want them wireless. I'm like, yeah, I got you. No worries. They put that in their back pocket. They can go wherever they need, and it's awesome. So we've been very happy with that. And we got a couple questions rolling in, but we'll ask that towards the end. That being said, let's jump into microphones. So I hate when I get the question personally. I don't know how you feel about it. Hey, which microphone should I get? Because, there's literally almost hundreds of different kinds. But let's break it down between, first of all, I guess the two main categories, which are condenser mics and dynamic mics. I'll let you answer since you're the expert. Let's talk about, I guess we'll start with condenser mics. What's a condenser mic? What's a dynamic mic? And what's really the big difference between the two?
All right. Do we want to we'll get a little technical. Fair enough.
Let's do it. Let's do it. These guys are all technical geeks.
All right, cool. So there's a real cool, when I started the company 20 million years ago, there's like a real cool demo that you do, because let's back up even further. So Audio-Technica makes transducers. We started making phono cartridges. Mm-hmm. So a transducer is anything that takes one form of energy and converts it into another form of energy. So in a phono cartridge, you have this little stylus, and that wiggles in the grooves, right? So it's just translating the grooves of the record. And there's little magnets that are up top in little coils. And what we find is if we wiggle magnets in a coil of wire, it produces electricity, albeit very small, right? So now what we're doing is we're taking mechanical energy and we're converting it to electrical energy. And then it goes through like the phono amp and all that stuff and makes it louder so that you can amplify it even more. So that's a phono cartridge. That's a transducer, mechanical to electrical. Speaker or headphones is electrical to mechanical. So we take these wires and we throw current down those wires, and it actually puts an electrical signal into a coil. It's exactly the opposite. And when that electrical signal goes in the coil, it reacts with the magnets around it and it moves the diaphragm, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what a speaker is. So a microphone is exactly the opposite. You have a diaphragm, and when that diaphragm moves, it pushes that coil of wire through the magnet and it produces a little current, right? So the cool demo you can do is you can take your headphones with a 1/4 inch, plug them into your recorder or your mixing console into the mic in, and use your headphones as a microphone. That's like the holy crap, my mic broke, emergency. I can now do at least crappy announcements with my headphones through my mixer. So, one of the cool demos is you record something through a headphone and then you put it into the headphone out and you play back what you just recorded through the headphone. So it's a really bad microphone, but it gets the point across. So dynamic microphones work exactly that. You have a coil, which is just like your speaker or your headphone diaphragm. So you have a little piece of paper or plastic. You put a coil of wire on the back, and you try to make that as light as possible. So when it catches the vibrations of air, it wiggles that coil. And the lighter you can make that, the more sensitive it's going to be, right? Mm-hmm. However, the lighter you make it can also be more fragile. So there's a big balancing act with dynamic microphones. So with a dynamic mic, it's the simplest. It wiggles the thing, produces energy, you stick it in the balanced input of your mixing console, turn it on, and away you go. So that's a dynamic microphone. Condenser is a little bit different story. So a condenser microphone actually uses a different material. It's like some of our diaphragms and our condenser microphones are 2 microns thick. Okay, so we're talking crazy thin materials here. But if you think about that, if you take a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper and you take a piece of tissue paper and you breathe on both of them, the tissue paper is going to move a lot more than the piece of, like printer paper, right? The printer paper is a dynamic element. The tissue paper is a condenser element. So the benefit of that is you get much better what they call transients. That's how fast the diaphragm moves. So with a piece of paper, when you blow on it, it moves this way and it takes a long time to get back because there's mass to it. When you're working with tissue, you blow on it and it wiggles real freely. So that's the transient response. So that's better on a condenser microphone. And the frequency response tends to be better because it's much better at reproducing much high frequencies. They're very small wavelengths and they don't move as much. So the lighter and thinner you make that material, the better. So end all be all. Dynamic microphones tend to be the proven, easy plug-in, good to go announce mic. Condenser microphones are very popular within the studio world. Like if I'm going to record acoustic guitar because I want to hear the strings and I want to hear all the breath of the instruments and all this sorts of stuff. So as a general rule, dynamic microphones are more of a live sound vocal microphone. Okay. They are also, because they react a little slower and they tend to have less frequency response, they tend not to feed back as much. The dynamic microphones are a little more resistant to feedback. Condenser microphones are more articulate. They give you more detail to the voice. So really, 9 out of 10 times you'll use a dynamic microphone, especially when you're starting out. Let me wiggle my screen, get some light in here. And then, as you progress and you learn your equipment better, and maybe you're doing live sound or there's going to be vocals at a performance, you can start looking into a condenser microphone. Just you have to understand that they're a little more difficult to work with. Condensers, because that signal from that movement of that diaphragm is so low, it's actually a different process. You're not moving a coil, you're just moving that in relation to a back plate and generating a different capacitance. It's so low that you have to amplify it. And when you amplify it, you have to have power, meaning what they call phantom power. It's also called remote power. But usually that's provided by the higher end mixing consoles. There's a little switch that says P48. So you actually need power to the microphone. Now in a wireless condenser or in some condenser microphones, that's in the way of a battery. It's supplied the current through a battery. But anyways, dynamic microphones, super easy to use, super durable, less feedback, more feedback proof. Condenser microphones, more detailed, better transients, a little more finicky, and require power. Does that kind of help a little bit?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I'll be honest with you. It's crazy because it's so common sense, but I'm like, why do we need phantom power? Oh, yeah, because bass frequencies require more energy. So, but that's
yeah. There's like a little what they call amplifier circuit in all condenser microphones, and you need to power that up. And what you're doing is you're just taking that minute signal from the condenser element and bringing it up, amplifying it up, so it's a signal that your mixer can work with. So that's pretty much all that's doing.
awesome. So then let's talk about, because you have DJs when they're getting their microphones. They hear terms like cardioid, especially with lapels too. Cardioid, I cannot pronounce that word to save my life. Omnidirectional, super. So, I mean, What are the different terms and what all do they mean for us?
All right. So everything we're talking about there is what's called a polar pattern. Okay. So a polar pattern is just a manufacturer's way of describing the nature of the pickup of the microphone. Okay. Let me see if I don't have any mics out here. Stupid. I have a recorder though. I can play a little recorder song. But so essentially, we either have. So I'm going to go top down. So 30,000 feet, they're polar patterns. The next level down, you either have directional or omnidirectional. So omnidirectional. Let me find a good prop here. I'll use this plug out of here. If this is my microphone, directional means it picks up the best from one direction and less from other directions. And an omnidirectional, you would typically see in like a lavalier or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It picks up the same intensity no matter where you talk into the microphone, from behind, beside, whatever. Typically, omnidirectional microphones are not used in live sound reinforcement or DJ use, okay? We use directional. Then when we're talking about directional microphones, there's a whole branch or subset of directional microphones. The most common is what they call cardioid. So if we think about the heart, the cardio, your cardio conditioning, the polar pattern viewed from the side on a cardioid microphone looks like this. It's the least from behind, and then it picks up like that.
Yeah.
And they call it cardioid because it looks like a heart shape. So it picks up the best here, it picks up the worst here from behind it. And that's how we minimize ambient noise in the room. So in other words, if I'm holding a cardioid like this and you're the crowd, you are right in what they call the null point of the microphone. So this is where the microphone is picking up the worst, is from behind it, and that's where you want that. Or if I'm a singer, that's where I put my floor monitor, so it goes into the back null point of the microphone, right?
Yeah, I'm pulling
sense.
up the pattern right now, so while people are hearing you, they're actually seeing the pattern, which
All right, cool.
It looks like a butt, so it's
Yeah. Well, we call it the butt pattern, but I think a buddyoid, I think, wouldn't have been as cute as cardioid, I suppose, or whatever. So then the next thing is there's a model called a hypercardioid, and you might want to find that.
okay.
So a hypercardioid is even more narrow on the front. So it's a much narrower pickup pattern on the front of the microphone. So if I'm off axis, my voice will go down substantially, okay? But it's like a balloon. So as I squeeze that pattern, this is all physics properties, and it's like dictated by physics. It's very difficult to kind of overcome a lot of these situations. But as I squeeze that front of the balloon, a little point pops up in the back of that pattern. So it has a little bit of pickup from the back. The most rejection comes from, I think it's, what is that, like 120 degrees off axis. So if I had a monitor I was monitoring with, I would want to put that monitor in a hypercardio at 120 degrees off axis. But it's going to give me the most amount of isolation to my voice because it's a real tight pattern. Then we have stuff like supercardioid. We call them subcardioid. That's actually wider than a cardioid pattern. So, if you have someone who's like really crazy with the mic and gets all off axis and doesn't know how to use a microphone, that might work. They're not as popular. The reality, again, is 9 out of 10 live microphones for most people are going to be dynamic, and 20 out of 21 times they're going to be cardioid. So all the other patterns are there because there's figure of 8 where the back picks up the same as the front, but the sides are null, but then you can do cool stereo techniques. So there's all these other patterns, but the majority of the people you're going to be dealing with are going to be dealing with dynamic mics and cardioid pickup patterns. And once you know how to work that microphone, you can go and kind of work any cardioid pickup mic. You just need to know that if you talk in the side, it's going to be way quieter.
So real quick, before we move on to the next part, as you were mentioning different mics and all that, I want to talk about multi-pattern mics and then ribbon mics, because that has actually come up before. So what are those two exactly?
Okay, so a multi-pattern mic is typically the domain of a condenser microphone. It is 99% of the time used in the studio or at high-end live sound touring. And what that does is there's different ways to do it. Typically in our multi-pattern microphones, we actually have 2 capsules, and they're kind of back to back. And there's a switch on the microphone. So I can switch from omni to cardioid, and then to figure of 8 is typically the 3. Some of them have variable patterns, but for the most part, you go from omni, which picks up everything, to cardioid, which will only pick up in the front and not the back, to figure of 8, which will pick up the front and back, but not the sides. And that's done through phase cancellation and the way we manipulate these capsules in the microphone itself. So multi-pattern is almost the exclusive domain, as I said, of studio, and it's a way of making a microphone much more multi-purpose. One time you might want to use it in Omni for a room mic, and one time you might want to use it for cardioing for vocals.
So basically something like the 2050, which I'm going to pull up right now. It's kind of hard to see, guys, but here's the 2050 and actually have the 2020. If you need a good studio mic, this is what I do all my voiceovers with. But yeah, you can see the different pattern selection there. And then what's a ribbon mic?
Okay, so a ribbon microphone is kind of a play on a dynamic microphone. It was one of the first microphones ever developed. I mean, there are carbon microphones. That's what the telephone mic was that sounded like crap. That was truly one of the first microphones. But essentially a ribbon microphone is a large piece of typically pure aluminum that is corrugated. It looks like if you took a chewing gum wrapper and you folded it up a bunch and then pulled it out, it looked like an accordion. It's about that size. It's a real large piece of aluminum, and that's suspended within a magnetic field. So there's really big, strong magnets around a ribbon microphone, and it's kind of a real slow dynamic. But people really prize them in the studio for their vintage sound. So most of the announce mics and stuff you heard from the 30s and 40s, those were a lot of ribbon microphones. They roll off the top. So over about 7 to 12K, the top end just rolls off, right? Mm-hmm. So they're not super detailed on the high end, but they have this really nice vintage warmth that people like. And so people typically will use those on like horns, because horns can get really screechy and blary up in the top frequencies, so it kind of naturally rolls those off. People use those for guitar cabinets for the same reason. It provides a really big warm sound without getting really annoying. So that's a ribbon microphone, a different technology, but just a subset of a transducer and more of a dynamic transducer.
Gotcha. I actually did not know that. I tell people, like, I ask these questions because, you know, you guys are the experts, but in that case, I really was not familiar with the ribbon mic technology. And you know what's crazy is, as long as I've been using turntables, I never actually sat down and said, okay, hold on a second, what exactly is inside the cartridge? Yeah, that makes sense. The two magnets. So I guess real quick, I think that's all really. I mean, as far as, you know, for the DJ side, like you said, I mean, most of them are going to be cardioid type. Is there a multi-pattern microphone available within the lapel? Because I do find myself a lot of times wishing the lapels were very directional, especially with the wind. I hate using lapels out in Florida and during the middle of the summer because there's always wind coming up. But at the same time, I prefer the omnidirectional when there isn't wind, so it picks everybody up evenly. But do they sell? I mean, is that technology possible to be able to put two of those capsules in a lapel to be able to switch back and forth?
That's a good question. And to my knowledge, no one makes one of those. So we actually, because typically you kind of have two camps. You know, you either want the smallest footprint you can get in a lavalier, which you can do very easily in an omnidirectional, but it's very difficult to have a cardioid in a very small capsule because what you need to do, I'm looking for an aid, but anyways, what you need to do in that situation is you need to let audio into the back side of the diaphragm, and you need to control that, and that's what forms the polar pattern. So if you look at like some of my lavaliers that are directional versus omni, you're going to see they're physically much larger because they need these porting holes on the back. So to my knowledge, there are no easy ways to do that. But I'm going to give Audio-Technica another plug, because I've just released an entire new video series. So many DJs now are responsible for doing sometimes videography or recording or whatnot. So I have an entire, it's essentially probably a college level class on audio for video. And it's, I think, 13 videos. And it starts out with how to hold a boom pole, how to put a lavalier on someone, how to make very high windscreens out of commonly used household items. So that's a good one for you.
Of course.
How to mic the inside of a car. Like, so there's this like crazy amount of video content I have, and that's on our YouTube channel. It's called Audio-Technica US Audio-Technica. And if you go to my website, like I have links to all our social spots on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'll post those in the description too on the video so people will be able to click directly. And by the way, guys, open up another window while you're listening to us. Go find Audio-Technica on YouTube right now and go show them some love. Subscribe, give them a good thumbs up. But yeah, send me those links and I will post those up on the page too. Gary, a couple quick questions that came in that were kind of relevant to what you were talking about. One, do you prefer IEM or over-the-ear headphones for when you're doing live sound?
I think I'm an old school dude. So, we came out with our first series of in-ear monitors, the IEMs, and we have 3 in the line. And even when I fly, so I do a lot of international travel, and like Japan is like a 13-hour flight or whatever, I still use these headphones. I don't use our Bluetooth headphones. I don't use our noise canceling headphones. I don't use our in-ears. I'm still a big fan of closed back headphones. I just find them, the audio I prefer. I think this gives good isolation without having actually batteries in the headphones, which I think kind of affects the sound and kind of makes a weird, I don't know. I'm just old school, but of course we sell a ridiculous amount of noise canceling headphones too that people really like, and Bluetooth and the whole like.
Oh,
but
of course.
I guess I'm showing my age on that one, but I really prefer closed back, over ear, comfortable headphones for when I'm doing live sound, when I'm doing tracking for drumming, or when I'm traveling.
And the next question that come in. So one of the things that I've heard, and this one's actually coming from me, but one of the things I've heard is that when it comes to microphones, the dynamic microphones, because it is a little bit, I guess the diaphragm's a little bit heavier on that, it is better in really places that are, with high humidity, and the dynamic microphones are going to be a little bit more tolerant for loud SPL. So, we're not supposed to scream into the microphone, but like I've done wrestling events and I've used cheaper mics because they will drop the mic and everything else. But the microphones that we use didn't die from them being dropped. They died from people literally yelling into them.
Okay.
And we didn't even use the name brand. It was specifically because they were dropping the mics and everything else. I lent them the first time I did use my 2000s, and the 2000s easily survived. But I'm like, I can't have them dropping my babies like that. So
yeah, okay. So here's what I can tell you about dynamic microphones versus condenser versus whatever. So dynamic microphones historically are more durable. There's just less stuff in them. You got a diaphragm with a coil in a magnet. That's pretty much what you got in a dynamic element, right? Mm-hmm. As far as max SPL, in a wired dynamic microphone, and we have 2 anechoic chambers in STO. So we actually have 2 chambers where we curve microphones. We have yet been able to test the max SPL on a dynamic microphone, okay? We are theoretically incapable of producing a loud enough sound that will damage a dynamic microphone. And that's kind of across the board. Condenser microphones, you will see, have a max SPL rating, and that's called maximum sound pressure. And that's the point where the diaphragm or the electronics break up to a point where you present like 10% distortion or something. I don't know what the actual spec is, but condenser microphones are typically limited by the electronics, because remember, dynamic microphone doesn't have any electronics in line. Condenser microphones do. So that is typically the limiting factor for SPL on a condenser microphone. And so when you put a dynamic microphone on a wireless, you're now putting electronics in the path, because now we have companders and all kinds of crazy electronics in there, which we optimize. And that's why on all our handhelds, if you're going to be using them in a ridiculously loud environment, like screamo band or something, there's actually a little tweaker on the inside of the microphone that you can trim down the microphone and make it less sensitive. But for most applications, that has been optimized from the factory, and you just kind of leave it alone, and it would be very difficult to overload one of those mics.
Awesome. And then one of the things that I wanted to ask, based on what you were talking about earlier, was not just handling noise, but the on-off switch. So this time I'll plug Audio-Technica in. The reason that I switched to you guys years ago, we used to use another company that starts with S. And there were two things I hated about their microphones. Every time I turned them on and off, they popped, and it was so loud and obnoxious. They didn't have a mute button. You know, Audio-Technica, even if I turn them on and off, you know, the manual way, they don't have that pop button. But I know my 3000 almost has no handling noise. I'll sit there and, you know, people will pass the mic from one to another, and you don't get as much handling noise as we got with other microphones of other brands. But I don't see really a handling noise listed as a spec. I know the on-off thing, it's really just, you have to ask somebody, hey, does this mic pop when you turn it on and off? But is there a rating for handling noise? I mean, if
that's a good question, because again, being on all those teams, you know, one of the things we do is we take the microphone. I wish I had a microphone that system. I have a System 10 transmitter. Anyways, you know, one of the things we do this,
mm-hmm.
and we do handling noise like this, where we put our hands all over it and we rub it, which is lewd, but we do it anyways. And, you know, we use internally as our kind of gauge for handling noise. And we have a big set of QSCs with an 18-inch sub, and we go in a room and we jerk around with the microphones just for kind of a qualitative guesstimate as to what the handling noise is going to be. You can also do things with frequency response, but yeah, there's no real way to measure handling noise because there's no set standard. Is it snapping it into a stand? Is it grabbing it? How wet is your hand? You know, even that we find that the paint finish is a big factor in how much handling noise you get. So if you texture a handheld too much, you'll get more handling noise than if it's a little smoother. So all these things kind of play in. So just as manufacturers all combined, these are the things we do, but there's no real set test or spec for handling noise. But that's a good question.
That's a shame, because that was one of the things that, you know, when we just did a beauty pageant. I remember the first year we had the microphone up on the stage, and every time somebody walked, because the stage it's a stage, you hear the doom, 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 doom,
yeah.
Doom. So this year we're like, okay, you know what? We're going to use our System 10s. And even though I think the 3000, to me, it feels like it has less handling noise than the System 10s.
It has a little more mass to it.
Yeah, it's got a lot more mass, but even then, you know, like, you didn't hear as much. And I'm like, man, I really wish this was a standard. It's just been a pet peeve of mine that it isn't, because I tell people, like, look, you really need to test your mic out ahead of time if you can before you buy it, and really listen to the handling noise. So DJs, I can tell you this right now, and I'm not just saying this because Gary's here. It's God's honest truth. I switched to Audio-Technica. I will not look back. As far as handling noise, as far as the on-off pop, I don't even think you guys have any microphones that pop when you turn them on and off. Like
that's definitely like a basic requirement of our engineering. You know, that's one of the first things we test, because people do turn the mics on and off with the PA on, and like, you have some big PAs. We work with some people that are doing arena tours. You know, that is not acceptable if, you know, you're in the Normo Dome and you're having popping through your microphones. So that's kind of a basic, what do I want to say? Basic bullet point of entry into the market of a wireless manufacturer. So
yeah, well, you would think, but this other microphone costs a lot more than even my way more, actually twice the price of the 2000s. I'm like, okay, so I'm buying a microphone that's half the price. I get better sound, and it doesn't pop on and off. And I got to tell you, guys, if you're looking for, you guys still have the 2000s as a microphone?
Oh yeah, certainly.
So guys, if budget is a concern, you're gonna love the 2000s. That is,
I think it's like $349 or something for a handheld.
Yeah, it's
somewhere right there.
Guys, it's ridiculous what you get for that price. It is a great mic. Actually, I remember that was the first microphone that we bought when I was working at the skating rink, and everything was wired, and we switched to wireless. Every wireless system would give us problems as we're skating. You would hear the boom, boom, boom when you're skating, and 2000s actually handled it pretty well.
Awesome.
But now the question that we all have to ask is, will the FCC screw us as far as, frequency? So, guys, let me catch you up a little bit, and then Gary will kind of take it from there. Years ago,
and I might correct you on some
Oh,
stuff.
I'm sure. I'm
But
sure.
you go.
So years ago, the 700 megahertz range was pretty much sold off in an auction because the FCC makes money out of it, and from what I understand, it's also an incentive for broadcast manufacturers to modernize. Is that correct?
To some extent, they did that back when DTV was happening. That was one of the reasons for the 700 meg.
Yeah, so I mean, we all had to pretty much sell our microphones to that point. I mean, I know a lot of you guys in the rural areas still use your 700 mics, and I mean, really, if there's no emergency services or whatever, 9 out of 10, you'll be fine. That's an unofficial statement. We definitely don't recommend breaking the law, but it is what it is. But now they've sold off to 600 megahertz. This did not go to multiple companies pretty much. It all went to T-Mobile. And they're going to be doing 5G they don't use the term 5G, but it's I think it's like HSPA plus like 4th or 5th gen. It's something insanely fast. Honestly, I'm excited about the technology, except for the fact that we're all getting screwed here. But it is going to be ridiculously fast. I know in Florida they said that it's going to be closer. They say 2020, but it's probably going to be sooner than that before we can't use our mic anymore. Doesn't matter where you're at. T-Mobile is pretty much going to overshadow you because you're talking, what is it? A cell phone transmitter isn't like several thousand watts, and we're here with like a couple hundred milliwatt, if that, microphone transmitter.
So a standard UHF like a 3000 or 2000 has switchable power, and I think it's 10 in the low and 35 in the high. So it's a very small transmission. So 35 milliwatts or 30 milliwatts, right around there.
Yeah, so pretty much we're not going to compete with T-Mobile. And again, I know some of you guys are saying, well, I live in a remote part. You're going to be affected by the 600 big time. And
okay.
Hopefully not. I mean, I don't know how it's going to work, but I don't think we're going to interrupt T-Mobile. It's more T-Mobile's going to interrupt us, right?
Yeah, so here's the way it works. So as it stands now, the way wireless operates, we're kind of a fringe transmission device. It's kind of like we're not supposed to be doing it, but the FCC puts up with it. Mm-hmm. So the way it rolls is legally, wireless manufacturers, like in our world, professional audio world, we have to accept any interference from a carrier that's authorized, and we cannot create interference to a signal. So that's kind of the way it's been forever. So in the 600 meg, you're right. It was a big money grab for the government. And this time it really shook up the TV industry because essentially they're having to take these transmitters and they're pushing them down into 500 meg. So that's going to be rolled out over 10 phases through July of 2020. So what does that mean for everyone? First of all, July of 2020, that is the period where after that date, you are truly broadcasting illegally and can get fined or penalized. Okay, so that is the no wireless microphones can turn on, period, end all be all statement, right? Per the FCC. That's when they become truly illegal. Mm-hmm. Up until that point, you cannot create interference on an authorized carrier, and you have to accept any interference that they provide. So to make this easier on the TV stations, the FCC has devised this 10-stage rollout till the middle of 2020, where they say, all right, stage one, TV transmitters in these areas have to get out. Stage two, this area get out. 3, this area get out. 4, and it does that, and it typically goes from lesser population densities up to higher population densities. So what can we expect? We really don't know. So as Audio-Technica, our statement is stuff's going down. You're going to have to change something. The environment's going to change, but don't panic. Okay, so the last thing you want to do is panic because you pay a lot of money for a wireless, right? Mm-hmm. There's no reason to trash it until you really know what's going to be happening, right? And this is all a big mystery. And we've been in close contact with the T-Mobile folks Um, so one of the things that you're going to find is when these TV stations start to relocate down into 500 meg, the stuff you're transmitting in 500 meg is going to start to get a little bit more congested because they're moving new transmitters down there. So that's a problem. While that happens, until T-Mobile or whoever, there's some other people who bought that frequency range, until they spark on their transmitters, it may actually get better for a time period. We don't know. And if you're not in a mission critical situation, my advice is to use it until the wheels fall off. You know, you just bought new tires on a car. Don't trade it in because someone told you that you can't ride on the roads in 2020, right?
Yeah.
I would go until you can't. Always have a backup wired microphone, you know, because there's going to be incentives. I know other manufacturers have incentives. We're going to be coming out with incentives. And there's also going to be new products that come out in that time period. So don't be rash and trade out all your stuff before you have to. That's my personal advice. Again, the whole thing is fluid. We really don't know what's going to happen. One of the things I can tell you, can I get into the weeds here a little bit?
Go ahead, do it.
All right, so 600 meg is like this wide, right? Let's think of it as a 2-lane road. There's uplink, and so that means my phone is on uplink, lower power, and that's what's pinging the cell tower, right? Location and all that. And then on the other lane, in the higher 600 megahertz, there's the downlink. That's the tower, mega tower, blasting RF, okay? There's also the lane divider, is this kind of no man's land in between the uplink and the downlink, and that's called the duplex gap. It is possible up until the middle of 2020 that if you start to get interference, you can tune into that duplex gap. It's possible that there are frequencies in there that can be used. And again, DJs are typically not like a Broadway theater using 80 channels of wireless. You guys are using 1 or 2 wireless at a time. Yeah. So you guys are probably in the best position, more so than like churches and rock bands and theater. The other thing I can tell you is all the Audio-Technica wireless that's in that 600 megahertz, we're in the uplink band. So we're competing with these guys. We're not competing with the tower. So again, I'm not saying don't worry. I'm saying don't panic.
That makes sense.
There's been you know what I mean? So, you know, kind of stay tuned, know and start to budget now, because at some point, if you have 600 meg stuff, you're going to have to get out of it, but budget for it. Don't buy something cheaper just to get out and then chuck your system that still works. You know, really think about it, budget and plan your purchases.
Before I want to kind of touch on what you said there. Before we do that, there's 2 things that I actually want to ask based on what you said. One, since now TVs and all that broadcast studios are going to move to the 500 megahertz, does that mean that people on 500 megahertz are going to see a lot more interference on their microphones?
They could or they could not. This is so regionally dependent. So we do know that there's going to be more activity in 500 meg for 2 reasons. One, people who like UHF transmission are going to move into 500 meg with new wireless, right? Coming out of their 600 meg. And TV stations are going to start to pop up around there. So it is going to become more congested. And it's just a simple fact, you know, you got a swimming pool with 6 lanes of people swimming in, and you just moved it down to 3 lanes. People are bumping into each other more. So, but your mileage may vary. You will have people that will be like, what 600 meg transition? And you're going to be people, you know, a year from now that are going to be like, crap, I can't use my wireless. So.
And has the FCC never discussed doing an operator's license? I mean, I know it's DJs who are like, oh, I can't believe I have to get a license to get a microphone, but I actually wouldn't mind it. You know, if they said, okay, you know what? You have the microphone, here's the frequency range, you need to register your microphone, you know, pay $100 a year or whatever it is, almost like a ham license.
Yeah, you know, there was talk of that. I can tell you, we do make a wireless in the 900 meg band, and it's primarily for broadcast applications. And that is in a licensed band of 900 megahertz spectrum. And traditionally, you had to be a broadcaster to get that license. Because of all this mucky muck that the FCC has done, they've actually opened up that license to apply to any company, like a sound company, that regularly uses 50 channels of more of wireless, and that's including wireless microphones, in-ears, and comm systems.
Oh, wow.
So if there are companies out there doing regularly 50 channel shows, they can apply to operate within this 900 megahertz bandwidth. So that is one thing that they've done, but they haven't really done that on a license for, just regular users, not regular users, but you know what I mean, like non 50 channel or more users.
Gotcha. Well, that'd be actually nice if they did that. I mean, I'm so used to now having to pay the government for everything, even right down to flying my drone. I would be happy.
Right.
I'd be happy to just do that and not have the interference. Actually, the thing really came down to, there's a place down here, it's a racetrack in a place called Sebring, and we can't use any wireless microphones there because we're always overridden by the PA for the racetrack, and we've had interruptions, so we're always on a wired system there. I'm like, that'd be really nice if this was a band that we could actually have a license to operate. That being said, I mean, I do love your advice of pretty much use it until we can't anymore. And somebody had asked, actually, because I'm getting some questions via Facebook, well, what would the backup plan be if I don't want to do a wired? I actually always bring a second wireless with me. And again, I'm going to show it to you guys. Where's my System 10? So guys, we have the System 10 handheld mic, which is right now your safest bet because it's 2.4 gigahertz. And we were actually just talking about this before we went live. A lot of people are scared about using 2.4 because everything's on 2.4. But I can tell you I've used the System 10 at Disney, where there's hundreds of networks. I have used it. Actually, we just used it at NAMM, or not NAMM, I'm sorry, DJ Expo, and there were about 75 some odd different channels there. And the System 10 has not had a single dropout. I have this, which is, I use it for my wireless in-ear monitors. And again, for those DJs that are curious how that works, we have the body pack with the instrument cable. That goes to the mixer. My in-ear monitors plug into the monitor here. I've got a separate, volume control, and we're good to go there. But if anything happens, I have my handheld mic. I can control it here. And this has worked just as good as the actual full physical receiver for me. I've gone about 150 feet away from this thing. Now, the big one does offer you some advantages, including being able to extend your antennas with Cat 5. So if you're doing a ceremony and the officiant is 150, 300 feet away from you, can have the antennas right next to him without having all your gear there. That's wonderful to have, especially, I think it was more of a fixed install type thing, but for mobile install also, that's been a godsend. I mean,
it's good. Anytime you can get, especially in the 2.4 gig, they're very small wavelengths, so they don't go through people. We're big bags of water, right? And that absorbs RF like nobody's business. So 2.4, one of the nature, it's just, again, we're back down to physics, is the frequency tend not to transmit through things super well. So you want to get your antennas up and out. So if you have them in a metal rack, like down below, that System 10 Pro allows you to take those antennas out. Even if you put them on a mic stand and get that up 6-8 feet, it'll dramatically increase your range. And as you said, if you're 200 feet away from someone speaking and you run category cable down there, having your antennas next to the transmitter brings your gain, your signal to noise ratio way up. So your signal of your wireless is much hotter than what the noise floor is of the environment. And the other thing about that System 10, this guy here, we'll both show it, we'll go crazy, System 10 crazy, is it's dynamically allocated. So for those people who are not real familiar with the technology, in the traditional UHF wireless, you either set your frequency with a little screwdriver, or you push up and down and you set your frequency, and the transmitter and the receiver have to be on the same frequency. This guy changes frequencies all the time. So it monitors the air, and if it's going to encounter interference, it automatically hops to another frequency. And that's how you can utilize something like this, even though it's in a crowded environment, without getting the hits, like Arnoldo was saying. Like, it's just kind of works, and it's magic. It's like, if you think about wireless and you think about the technology we have today, if every time I changed city, I had to go in and type in what my city was and set my frequency on my cell phone, that would just not be acceptable to us. The way we work, we want to turn something on and we want to go work on other things. Like, I got way bigger problems than trying to figure out what frequency to broadcast on. That's what this does.
Yeah, and
So
again, I've had zero dropouts. Blake just asked if it, if there is a 5 gigahertz version, if it's switchable. It's only 2.4, correct?
yeah, 2.4, correct.
But again, guys, no matter how congested your area is, I guarantee you it is not more congested than Walt Disney World. Matter of fact, I will bet anything on it and people don't realize, I mean, you have Walt Disney World, you have everything that's running on Walt Disney World, and then all the different condos and hotels around it. I mean, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of different networks flying through there, and no dropouts. It's been wonderful.
Great.
Real quick, Jacob asked about the IEMs. He says, "Do I use we use the AT GRCW or the Pros?" I told him I've heard both. I mean, I prefer the Pros all the way through. What's your preference, Gary?
Well, the difference is the GRCW. You're like digging into my model number memory banks here, but the GCW and the GRCW are both molded end plastic cables with a plastic molded end. The Pros we did primarily, believe it or not, for guitarists. So it's a true Switchcraft 1/4-inch connector, and it's a cloth-covered cable.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like higher quality components from start to finish on the Pro. But the regular molded end connector, from a durability standpoint, is very, very good. You just can't repair it where you can with like a Switchcraft.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I have both. I've used the Pro. Actually, I used it when we had a guitarist because they seem to move around. They go everywhere, and they can be pretty rough. From the DJ perspective, mine is not a 90-degree angle, though.
No, so that's the R. So if it has an R, it means right
Yeah.
angle. If it doesn't say R, it's straight connector.
Yeah, I have the straight connector.
Yep.
I do prefer using the Pro cable where at all possible, but this is the one that I usually carry around with me. The Pro one, we have it for our actual events. This is like my personal gear that I stole from the company because I can do that. So
That's right. Hey, trust me. I know what you're talking about.
Jacob, if you're going to use them for your IEMs, either or. The Pro's obviously going to last you a lot longer, and the price difference is kind of minuscule, really. Or you can get two of the GRCWs. As long as your mixer's not moving around a lot, I don't see why you would need the Pro if you're trying to save as much money as possible. But even this mic here, and I've used and abused, and I've actually had it where it was dangling the whole time, and it's fine. So you guys make good products, Gary.
Cool.
So let's go to a couple questions, and then we'll kind of go from we'll pick out the winner, and we'll go from there. So Lindley Barton asks, I see, and he's from Australia, so we got people tuning in from all over the world too. Lindley asks, I see a number of DJs using headphones or over one ear while mixing. Are there any advantages or disadvantages to this?
Well, I mean, that comes down to what you were saying earlier. A lot of DJs and a lot of musicians, in fact, you'll see the exact same thing happen with musicians, and they'll have in-ears and they'll have one dangling down, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like they want to hear, but you want to be connected to the crowd. So when you're wearing closed-back headphones or in-ears, especially with in-ears, as you were saying, you are completely isolated. You might as well be in an isolation tank floating around doing your DJ set. You know what I mean? So a lot of people will pull this off. It does two things. One, it allows you to feed off the crowd. And B, it allows you to hear if there's any, because like if you have in-ears on and you're plugged into your mixer and there's audio problems in the PA, you're not going to hear them. So a lot of people like to monitor. A lot of people like to hear what the ambience is going on. So you'll see that, you'll see a lot of that. And then you'll see a lot of that, or you'll see a lot of this.
Yeah.
But really it comes down to a style thing over time. You'll kind of find your own style. But, sometimes I do this, like even talking right now, I just want to hear the space. I feel you start to get kind of claustrophobic. So
I've always wished that they made headphones, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, that you could swap between open back and closed back, because I think I could see actually a couple of DJs going for the open back just for the sense that they can hear what's going on out there on one side and have a closed back on the other side.
Yeah, interesting.
It's we're a very weird crowd. So
we call them they're opportunities, and you're unique.
So Jacob asks, he asked about the cable when we're using the wireless IEMs. I think we just discussed that. And then Chris Davis asks, he says his Shure SM58 wired mic seems to lose its grip on the connector, which causes him to buy new wires. Is there a better way to make it last longer? Yeah, don't buy Shure. And
No, hang on. So my guess, so he's buying new cables. So the way the XLR connector works, and this is with anything, it's a positive snap connection, right? So
Yeah.
you push down on the button, you insert it. When you undo that button, there's like a little tab that goes into a little hole in the microphone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you physically cannot pull it down until you release that little tab out of that hole and pull it out. If it's falling out, my guess is if he looks into that connector where the microphone little tab goes into, he's going to find that that broke out, or it's worn down, or it's not making a connection, or there's something preventing it from going into the microphone far enough to where that tab will hit that hole.
Yeah.
That's my guess. So my guess is it's a physical issue with the microphone, or that connector inside the microphone has gotten loose. There's usually a little set screw in the side of the mic that might have fallen out, and so that connector got pushed up into the mic a little bit. But that would be my guess, because that's the only time I've ever really heard of that, unless you have a defective mic cable. But it sounds like he bought new mic cables. So.
Yeah, and I don't know if Chris, I don't know if you meant, because I figured that's what he's talking about when he said wires, unless he's talking about actual wires coming out of the mic. In that case, you're abusing the hell out of your mic.
That's right.
But he wants to know, what's the Audio-Technica equivalent to the Shure 58, a wired mic that holds up for mobile use?
We have a microphone called an ATM 510, and that is definitely my head-to-head comparison with the 58. My personal opinion, because we shot these things out a lot, obviously the 58 is the 800-pound gorilla. That's by far the most popular dynamic microphone in the world. So typically, they have the benefit of having the most popular microphone in the world. So if you're going to compete with that, you got to do something better, different, or cheaper, right?
Of course.
We happen to be the same price. We think we have a little bit better audio. We think our fidelity is a little bit better and a little more intelligible on the top end. You got to remember, the 58 is a great mic. You will never hear me disparage the 58. But when the 58 was designed, PAs were way different than they were now, right? That
Absolutely.
was when there was the Shure Vocal Master. I think it had like 10 6-inch cones in it or something, you know what I mean? So the way that microphone was designed was to make that system sound as good as it can sound. Now PAs are 20 to 20, very high fidelity, and you can come out with higher fidelity dynamic microphones. So that's just my 2 cents.
Oh, absolutely. And then I have to look here. I know that Crutchfield did an article not too long ago comparing both of them, and they really favored yours, actually. I'll see if I think it was Crutchfield. I'll have to find that article. So next question. We got a couple more here. So Day and Night DJs ask if anybody makes actual wireless headphones good enough for DJs, so they don't have to do something like what I did. I don't know if Audio-Technica has a wireless headphone that would be good for mobile use, but before you answer that, Gary, one of the reasons, because there are other wireless headphones that DJs have used, I found that I get a lot of dropouts personally, especially with Bluetooth. I don't trust Bluetooth for mixing, and there's a delay. And plus, with this, I can use any headphone that I want. If my transceiver breaks or something, I don't have headphones anymore. If for any reason this breaks or I have to use it for something else, I can still plug in. So I really do recommend this, because this is
okay. Let me start out, because you're pointing that thing around, but I want to make certain everyone knows what that is. That's a System 10, and in System 10 we have many different varieties. We have what we call a stack mount, and that's like a traditional wireless where the receiver, you can stack them one on top of each other, and it has 2 antennas.
I'm going to pull that up right now. Go ahead, keep going. Sorry.
Then we have the System 10 Stomp Box. That's what this is. This is for guitar players, right? Although there's some other applications, but the receiver sits on the floor by the guitar player, and they can switch amps and do kinds of fun things. But That's another System 10. We have the System 10 Pro we talked about earlier, which is a metal chassis, and it's rack mount receiver. So we have the stack, stomp, and rack. And then the one that he's using for his headphones is our camera mount. So it's a System 10 camera mount. So just so you know, there's 4 different flavors, if you will, of System 10 receiver.
Yeah, and again,
that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have both. This is just, it's been my backup. I use it for ceremonies because it's completely wireless. So if I have my wireless speaker and I haven't charged this thing for 3 gigs and it still works. I mean, it's great. And
yeah, it's like you better charge it because you get about 12 hours out of that thing, but you don't. You're living on the edge, dude. But the cool thing about that wireless is if you have a like cell phone power bank, you can charge it right off of there, or you can charge it off a laptop.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Which is
kind of cool.
And it uses basically the Android charging cable. It's USB, the micro, whatever it's called.
Yeah, whatever it is. It's not the mini micro. It's one of those.
Yeah. No, guys, this is definitely great. I do recommend the System 10 Pro, but get one of these. And the price is ridiculous on them too. Can we go?
So regarding the wireless, I wanted to get on wireless headphones. We do not have a professional wireless headphone, and for a couple reasons. One, for our pro studio users, the audio quality just isn't there yet for like the real particular guys. And in my opinion, the durability is not there for the DJ crowd. You guys are not necessarily tough on headphones. You're just what we would call like a very heavy user of headphones. And the reliability and durability just is not up to snuff. You know, if you guys can't be spending money on headphones every couple months. You want something that's going to last a little bit. So
absolutely. We've got a couple more questions, really good ones. Chris Davis asked, actually this is one I think we can all learn from. Is there a way to improve lapel pickups?
Like how to improve the pickup when you're using a lapel mic, or is there a way for manufacturers to
I think from the end user end. I mean, I've actually had this issue before, and actually ever since I switched to your lapels, I think the one that came with the System 10 Pro, I've had less of an issue. And I don't know if you know the model number for this, because I know you have
MT830R.
Yeah, this guy right here.
The MT830. That's a great microphone.
Oh man, it is. But with the other ones that we've used, with whether it's or whatever brand it was like we had to basically have it right here for it to be really good pickup, because if we try to crank it up and the officiant was soft-spoken or something, it would just feedback like crazy. So I think that's what Chris is asking, like what can we do as end users to make sure that the lapel sounds as close to an actual handheld as possible? I mean, I know that's...
Okay, so here's the thing. We're back to physics again.
Yeah.
Right? So, when people ask me, like, what's the best microphone for picking up my voice in a loud environment? The first thing I say is a dynamic handheld, right? That's going to give you the most gain before feedback of any option. The second thing is going to be a head-worn microphone like this, right? The third, we make what we call a head-worn lavalier. And that's a little guy that goes on your ear, and the microphone sits right here.
Really?
Right? Yeah, so it's just like a lavalier, but it's mounted to your ear. And the thing that's nice about it is when I'm talking, let me put it up here. When I'm talking and I do this and I have a lav here, I've just doubled my distance from the microphone. And the inverse square law tells us that it's the square, the distance, whatever, but you're actually half as loud when you double the distance, right?
Yeah.
So when you mount the microphone up here, you have a constant distance from your mouth no matter what you're doing. Does that make sense? It's called the BP893. If you want to look it up.
Yeah, I've never even heard of this before. You said BP
893.
893.
And it's almost, if you have hair, unfortunately I don't, but if you have hair, it's like virtually invisible.
It's a micro ear set. Holy crap, this thing is awesome.
It is very cool. So, but what you're asking for is almost physically impossible. You're looking for something that sounds like a close-up dynamic microphone, but you're picking up from a distance. So there are environments where it's really reverberant or it's noisy out, and you will never be able to get that gain up And you're just going to have to start playing the tricks like feedback suppressors and EQ and stuff like that, because regardless of the manufacturer, you're trying to overcome principles of physics, not overcome poor manufacturing. So it's just a wacky thing. Like lavs have their place, and sometimes it's just much more difficult to use. And you can get a directional lav. I know you're going to say something.
No, I was going to say, how is a micro ear set with wind compared to a lapel?
It's not unlike the same microphone, right? It's just that you're putting it in a fixed location. And I'm telling you right now, Arnaldo, you're not listening to me.
No.
You got to watch my video series.
No, definitely.
A lot of that will be addressed in there.
That is awesome.
Like how to mount mics, how to put them under clothes, how to make, all that stuff is cool.
I think I think you just made some DJs giddy. So, and then Dan Knight asks, what is the best way to clean or sanitize a microphone the guests use? Especially when every year we always have a new scare of a new disease. So,
okay, here's what I would do. First of all, I used to do artist relations for the company, so I would work with all the engineers with touring bands. And these guys are nasty, and they have makeup and like just gross stuff. So one of the duties of the monitor engineer on these tours was to clean up the microphones. First of all, take the head case off. It screws right off the top. Do not touch the element itself. Don't do anything with the element. You're not going to be able to clean that. But what you can do is take a pair of tweezers, and inside that ball of the microphone, you're going to take the tweezers and you're going to pull the foam out. So there's like about a ½ inch of foam that lines the inside of that ball. That's where the majority of the nastiness occurs, because it's the most porous thing on the microphone. Think of it like a sponge. And you can actually put that in soapy water, in hot soapy water, and kind of swish it around. And you just want to make certain it is fully dry before you reassemble. And then I have a lot of my guys that will take the metal ball of the windscreen and dip it in Listerine. So then you want to make certain everything dries completely before you reassemble, but they will do that for their artists every night. So every night they come up to the microphone, it's a fresh smelling mic. You can also, from my parts department, buy that foam inner windscreen. And you can just keep a bunch of those and replace them when they get nasty if you don't want to have to clean them, because that's where the nastiest bit. You never want to use your microphone without that little foam on the inside, because then all of a sudden the spit and crap goes onto your diaphragm. You can't clean the diaphragm. The diaphragm starts to get heavy, and it affects the high frequency response to your microphone.
I always bring a spare sock with me at all possible. I had one wedding years ago when I first started doing weddings, and the best man had the most stank ass breath ever. And it smelled on the microphone. You could tell when the maid of honor went to go use, she goes, "Oh," like,
no.
I'm like, well, did the mic zap you or something? She goes, "Smell." I'm like, oh God, what is that?
Yeah, that's nasty.
Oh, it was so bad. A lot of other questions popped up, but I'm pretty sure, actually, I'll bet anything it's on those videos, and I don't want to go too far over time. So I will put a link to the videos on the description of this video, as well as on the Gear It First page. However, Jim did ask, he says he has the ATW 0328. One of the very thin wires on that microphone broke. What are his options to fix or replace when his microphone
If I'm
breaks?
hearing on the microphone, that probably means the lavaliers.
He said, yeah, I'm guessing that's what he means, because he said, yeah.
Okay, so if it's the lavalier, every Audio-Technica wireless, almost without exception, manufactured since I've been with the company, utilizes that same locking connector on the body pack, the HRS style connector. You can just buy a replacement microphone, or you can contact our service department and they will let you know. Like they're really good. We have, I think, we do all the repair in our facility in Ohio for the entire United States. Okay. I think right now on wireless, we have 50 repairs in house, and we usually have about a 3 to 4 day turnaround. So they are cranking stuff out there. The good news is our stuff doesn't break. The better news is when it does, we turn it around quickly. So
awesome.
If you call them, they will pick up the phone and they will discuss your situation.
Awesome. Yeah.
I also want to let you know,
yes,
before I forget, we have another very unique department at Audio-Technica called Audio Solutions. We have 4 human beings. sitting in there, and all they do every day is answer questions about how to use Audio-Technica gear, and many times that's how to interface our gear with other gear. So we actually have 4 human-type people sitting in our facility answering questions daily and helping people use our equipment. So that's another resource that people can use.
That is awesome. Okay, so real quick, the videos. Again, I'll post a link, but some people, I guess, are impatient. Can you tell them exactly again how they can find the videos?
Yeah, I'm only the marketing director. How do you expect me to know these things?
I know, right?
All right, so if you go to our website, which I'm going to do right now on my phone, audio-technica.com. All right, there we go. And if we go to my home page and scroll all the way to the bottom, we have all our social pages, right?
Okay.
I am going to click on YouTube, and then we're going to come up with our YouTube channel. Uh-oh, there we go. Come on, baby. Make it happen. We are,
Matter of fact,
you can see this.
I was gonna say, if you want to send it to me,
Audio-Technica USA.
okay, cool.
I just did that video on the M50. It's really awesome. But then, if I go to playlist drop down, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 video series down is called Basic Audio Techniques for Video. That's where you're going to find lavalier techniques. You're going to find boom miking techniques. You're going to find room miking techniques. And then if you go 3 more down from that or so, I have 30 videos on various miking applications. And within there is how to do a podcast as well. So I got a lot of great educational content on that site.
That is awesome. And most people have to pay for that kind of stuff too.
We just want to be your friend. That's all we really want, Arnaldo.
Of course.
You know?
Absolutely.
That's all we're looking for. We just want to be liked.
All right, so I'm going to punch in all the names, and I had to pull up the email because I forgot of the prizes. They all bleed together after advertising the heck out of this. I know you said you were doing the M50X, correct?
Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah,
I don't know. Okay,
yeah, no, that's what it was.
That.
That's what it was. Is it U.S. only or U.S. and Canada? Where are you able to ship it to?
U.S. only, please.
Okay.
Unless I can ship it to you and you can ship it.
Yeah, we can do that too. So, guys, if you are out of the country and you win, if you want to take care of the shipping, like we can figure it out. We'll make it work. All right. So what I do is I copied all the names that came in. If you guys are listening to this now, I've punched in all the names into random.org/list. David, I did get you, so don't worry about it. You came in just in the right time. That's what she said. And Paul. I like how suddenly everybody's now putting in their name. So we have Paul. And
Can I put my name in?
Huh? You know what?
Put my name in?
So I actually everybody's all the advertisers are on there too. But the way it works is they have to be present to win. I kid you not. The guy, David Anderson, was doing a thing on his, and then we did a double live stream with his stuff and Arceus because he does video mapping and projections. He won the software. I'm like, son of a gun. If this contest doesn't look rigged. So, all right.
I would gladly donate them if I won.
I know that if that happens again, I'm like, wait a second. All right. So the winner is, drum roll. All right. So, that's why we have 2 prizes. So, guys, the 2 winners are, and hopefully y'all did not log on in the last couple of seconds, Marvin Ventura and Joshua Boudreau. Congratulations, guys. Hopefully you guys are in the U.S. Marvin is in Hawaii, which is technically another country. Are you guys able to ship to Hawaii?
Yes.
Okay. I say it's another country because I've shipped stuff to Hawaii before, and it made it to Canada faster than it did to Hawaii. So
yeah, I can't say how long it's going to take to get there, but we'll get it there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Before you log off, Gary, real quick, let's talk about your social media. I know you guys have Instagram, correct?
Yep.
It should be under Audio-Technica USA, correct?
Yep.
All right, so guys, right there, audio. Yeah, make sure I didn't like show something
I
else
know
inappropriate.
it doesn't work. Oh, there we go.
There it is. Audio-Technica USA, and then you guys have the YouTube, which we'll post a link to that. And also go show them some love on Facebook. Is it just under Audio-Technica or also Audio-Technica USA?
It's US Audio-Technica.
US Audio-Technica.
Yeah, we have so many world areas, it gets messy, and we apologize for that. But you know, what can we do?
Hey, that's what happens when you're a large company, especially one of the largest manufacturers when it comes to that sort of thing. So, okay, guys, if you won, Marvin and both Marvin and Josh, if you guys can message me on Facebook, and I just posted a link, and then you guys all feel free to add me there. I will get you in touch with Gary, and we'll figure it out. Gary, thank you
No
so
problem.
much for joining in. Guys, if you have any questions or anything else, please leave them in the comments down below. If you'd like to see more live streams like this, also leave them in the comments below. Give us a thumbs down, a thumbs up. And if you're one of those weirdos that gives us a thumbs down, whatever, you watched. That's all that matters. I'm Ronaldo Hoffman with Gear It First, here with Gary Boss of Audio-Technica. Thank you guys so much. Have a great evening, and God bless.
Thanks a lot.